Hey everyone, this is Callie. Thanks so much for joining me today. I've got a few cards to share and they're all made using the Simon Says Stamp Ribbon Quilt die set. These dies are so versatile and can create such a wonderful variety of cards that I just had to play with it again. Here's an up-close look at those dies. There are two examples of designs on the packaging, but there's so much more that you can do with these simple 5 dies. There are 2 zigzag-like dies here that will create your ribbon, and then these 2 other dies will create the ribbon strips so that you can add color for depth and dimension, or you can change the color altogether to make the design more interesting. And the square block will also help you create some other geometric designs, which I'm not going to use today. To make my first colorful card, I'm using these 4 dies here, and I've pre-cut 8 ribbons, 2 of each color using some orange, yellow, light blue, and purple cardstock. I also die cut another strip in white, and that's going to be used as a spacer between each of those ribbons so that I can place them evenly on a card panel, which you'll see later. For each of those primary colors, I've also die cut 3 additional colors of the same color family using the angled strips die so that I can add dimension later on. Before I construct my ribbons, I want to stamp this thank you text to my white background. And for those of you who don't know, this stamp set is a photopolymer reprise to a red rubber stamp that's currently still available at Simon Says Stamp, giving you the option of what you like better for background stamps. I'm stamping my background with a really soft brown in LATTE ink, and this is going to just provide that subtle text in the background, but not get too distracting that it takes away from the ribbons that I'm going to add to this panel. For my full panel designs today, each of these panels is cut to 4 inches by 5¼ inches. That will perfectly place these ribbons onto each panel without a border. So my first step is to add each of these colorful ribbons across the panel. To ensure that everything is lined up perfectly, you want to make sure that that first ribbon is lined up with the edge of this card panel. Then using that white spacer, I'm going to butt it up next to that orange strip and then apply my yellow strip. And then I'll repeat this step until I get to the very end of the panel. It's very important to make sure that there are no gaps between each of these ribbon strips to guarantee that they are evenly spaced, and by the time you get to the end of the panel with that last purple strip, that it's going to fit perfectly along the edge of the card panel. I just skipped that spacer for that last purple strip and just adhered it so that it lined up with the right side of this card panel. So this completes the first step in making this card. While these pastel ribbons are very pretty and can be left just like this, I want to give it more dimension and color using those other blocked strips that I die cut using darker colors from the same or adjacent color family so that I can create a gradient on these ribbon strips. So on this light orange strip, I'm adding these little blocks to create a gradient from orange to red. So I've got 3 other colors here that I've die cut using a light coral, medium coral, and then a red. From doing that first stack, I realized that I should be going from the bottom up, starting with the lightest color, because there's going to be some overlap on each of those corners. So I've counted 4 blocks from that first stack, which includes the original light orange color, and then I'll repeat my stack so that we have a gradient of color that's repeated. And I'll finish this orange to red ribbon here with 2 final darker colors. This gradient of color really adds a lot of depth and dimension to this ribbon and gives it so much more interest. So moving on to the next ribbon, we've got the yellows going from light yellow to dark yellow, and I am working again from the bottom up so that I can overlap the corners from light to dark. And I've shifted the dark color halfway down in between the darker red colors. That way this will give it a bit more interest and is visually more balanced when you see darks and lights in different areas. And I'll just keep alternating between the 2 as I move from left to right. So this blue pattern is going to be like the red pattern, with the darkest teal colors being at the top, center, and bottom of the card. Now I know this looks tedious and it's quite repetitive, but as I move along, piecing something like this together can be really relaxing, a lot like stacking sentiment dies. So I don't think of it as tedious or not worth my time because I think the details are really what make each card design special. And it's a great reason to save a card like this for someone who's going to appreciate the hard work that you've put into it. Okay, so I'm wrapping up the first section of colors with the purples, and that's going to match the yellow, because remember, we're alternating between the two ribbon patterns. Now I'm going to repeat the red, and it's going to match the red on the left side. So I'll just repeat this process until I get to the very end. Once I got into the groove of the pattern and where to start and stop, because I can refer to the first block of colors, this went a lot faster and a lot smoother. And as I near the end here, you can see how adding all of these blocks of darker cardstock is really creating a lot of depth and dimension to each ribbon. You can make it easier by adding only 2 colors to each ribbon, or just doing 1 color for the entire card. So there's lots of different varieties to using these ribbon dies for this particular pattern. Now for my second and third cards, I'm going to create the same pattern. I'm going to call it a chain link because I'm using 2 different colors of ribbons and I'm going to chain them together to create this look. Now I was playing with these ribbons and came up with this design, and I thought it was really fun that I was able to kind of weave them together and create this look. So I've created one pattern using the pinks and wild berry colors, and now I'm going to show you how I did that using some blues and purples. Now you want one of the colors with the tops angling to the right, and the blues, I'm going to start them angling to the left at the top. And I'm going to overlap them, and as you can see, you can just do a simpler design by just adding them together one on top of the other, kind of like on the packaging of the die. But I was playing with this and I thought it was really fun that I could kind of weave them together. So I have the blue over the purple to start with, and that's going to be the same for each of these chain links. So holding the top together, I'm going to make sure that I have a few weaved before I let go and weave the ends, because if you don't hold the top together, the top can undo itself while you're working on braiding the bottom. So I've got one link here done, and I'm going to continue with the rest of the pieces. Again, you want the blue overlapping the purple, and then you'll continue taking the chains and linking them one over the other until you get to the bottom. Once I get to the bottom and finish the chain, I just want to make a tweak and adjust the chain a little bit so that the pieces are evenly spaced, so it makes it easier to line up each of these chains later on. So this is super easy to do. I'm just crisscrossing the 2 pieces, and it kind of reminds me of like braiding hair. And when I finish with this one, I'll bring in the other ones that I finished off camera, and I have a total of 8. So like with my first card, this purple panel is also cut to 4 inches by 5¼ inches. That is going to fit the exact length and width of all of these chains going from left and right, and you're going to be able to fit 8 chains going across the panel. To make sure that I'm lining up these chains perfectly, I first made adjustments to make sure that they're as even as possible before I place it on the cardstock. Once it's down, I just need to ensure that all of the sides of this chain link are flush with the side of the card panel, and I'm making little micro adjustments as necessary. Okay, so now for the second strip, if you can see at the top there, I'm trying to point out that you want a continuous chain. So in order to do that and get the purples to match up, I'm going to flip the one chain over 180 degrees. Then I'll add adhesive to the back and then adhere it down just like I did before. I'm going to make sure that all of the sides are flush with the previous chain and all of the sides are touching and flush with each other. So this third row is not going to need to be flipped. It's just going to be placed down, and you'll see that all of the purples are going to line up and all of the blues are going to line up. Then for the fourth one, I'm going to flip that. So every other column, I'm flipping that chain link before adhering it down to make sure that that chain pattern is consistent across this panel. And with this uniform design across this panel, it's especially important that there are no gaps between any of these chain links. So that way when you get to the very end with that last piece, it's going to be flush on the right side as well. And if it doesn't end up even, there's no worries. You can always trim down the panel and make it look intentional. Okay, so now that I have all 3 backgrounds completed, I can go ahead and attach them to card bases. This just skips a step for me at the end to do it now, and it just makes everything a little bit sturdier while I work on the sentiment. For these cards, I'm using the Thank You Basic set and the Birthday Basic set from Kathy Zilski. I'm going to start with some birthday sentiments here and emboss them in white over black cardstock. Before stamping with clear embossing ink, I'm going to prep my black cardstock with an anti-static powder tool. I want to be sure to get a crisp impression of these sentiments, but also to keep any stray white powders from clinging to the cardstock if I can. After heat setting my embossed sentiments, I can go ahead and use the coordinating dies to die cut these sentiments. I wanted to make my cards more festive, so I decided to die cut some party candles. I kept it simple with some gold metallic cardstock and some yellows for the flames. These were simple and easy to piece together, but true story, while I was doing this, tornado sirens started going off and I turned everything off and we made a mad dash for the basement until the sirens turned off and we were in the clear. I just wanted to put that on record because you can't tell by watching this video that any of that even happened, so I just thought I'd share. So back to putting these cards together, I am adding these candles with 3D foam squares and 3D foam strips to make everything pop a little bit against that busy background. And then I'll attach these embossed sentiments right over the candles in the middle towards the bottom third of these cards. And then I also prepped a sentiment for the last card using the Thank You Basic set, and I'll attach that simply with 3D foam squares. And of course, I couldn't call it quits without adding some little bling. So I'm using some Northern Lights embellishments and adding a few here and there until I'm satisfied with how these look. And that completes my set of cards using the ribbon quilt dies. If you're interested in any of the products that I used, be sure to check out the links below. Everything will be linked for your convenience and will be linked on the coordinating blog post as well. I hope you enjoyed these projects and will give it a try. This die is at a great price point, and I really don't think you'll regret adding it to your stash. Bye, everyone!
Hi there, I'm Heidi, Simon's mama and founder at simonsaysstamp.com. Thank you so much for watching our video. If you like what you just saw, be sure to press the thumbs up and subscribe to see more great content.